We know that the Independent Electoral Commission says it's preparing for the 2024 elections, which is around the corner. It comes despite possible legalities, legal action with the signing in of the Electoral Amendment Bill by President Cyril Ramaphosa. In conversation with Tselane, the Executive Chairman of the Institute of Election Management Services in Africa. We had some technical difficulties. I believe it's been fixed. Terry, welcome back. Let's just go back to some of the measures, the notable measures that feature in the bill. What's your take as we speak?
Yeah, as I was saying earlier on, that the most important thing is that we've got to bear in mind that the elections that took place in the past did not include individuals who are participating as individuals. It only allowed individuals to participate through membership of a political party. Now, this new Electoral Amendment Act essentially provides a platform through which individuals can now be able to stand as independents in an election, both at the national as well as a provincial level.
Some of the view that it's constitutionally flawed. It's going to send us into its constitutional crisis. Early on, Musi Maimane is saying that he will, alongside other candidates, contest. What's your take on that?
There are lots of defects in the Electoral Act. And then some of those have already been mentioned to say that there is inequality in terms of the way independents are treated compared to the political parties. And therefore, these are some of the issues that I would have thought would have been ironed out before they develop the bill into an act. Now, one of the problems that I thought, or rather one of the solutions I thought was going to be introduced. Remember that Parliament on 2 occasions approached the Constitutional Court to extend the invalidity of the Electoral Act so that it could still operate with that act in the meantime whilst they were still finalizing to put in the final details of this amendment. Now, I would have thought that they would actually go to the Constitutional Court and ask the Constitutional Court to extend the invalidity until 2024 elections. What would be the implications of this? The implications would be that we would actually have the elections in 2024 without the participation of independents. And this would actually enable Parliament sufficient time to be able to deal with all these issues that are being raised. And the fact that the Minister Aaron Motsoaledi, has actually indicated that immediately, or rather 4 months after the enactment of this act, he will be constituting what he refers to as the Electoral Reform Consultation Panel to deal with now the long-term aspects of the Electoral Act or the electoral framework. It's a clear admission and illustration that indeed this one that we have has got defects and that they did not have sufficient time to correct those defects that are in the bill. And I think they probably were ill-advised to proceed with the act with those defects that are already mentioned.
What about the public participation process? How would you weigh on that?
Also, remember that there was also, in terms of the implementation of the Constitutional Court judgment, there was a delay from the side of Parliament to deal with this particular aspect, and therefore there was not sufficient time to consult different constituencies, and then even those who had opinions. Unfortunately, the opinions could not actually be accommodated. If I could just give an example.
Sure.
There is an issue of having to divide South Africa into constituencies. Now, to develop South Africa into constituencies require quite a number of things. So one of them is to change the Demarcation Act in order to be able to empower the Demarcation Commission to be able to do the demarcation related to the national and provincial, because at the moment their responsibilities only relate to the municipal boundaries and the wards. You know, so that is another aspect. It's a very complex aspect that have got to be dealt with. Another legislation that has got to be dealt with, it's actually on the Party Funding Act. The Party Funding Act, for instance, does not cater for individuals who are standing as independents. Now, remember that in terms of the current legislation on the Party Funding Act, when a political party gets a seat, it receives a certain amount from the fiscus, 2/3 proportional to the number of seats that a political party has, and then 1/3 equitable, to all the political parties that are there in Parliament. Now, you'll be having these people who have also spent money campaigning, and they managed to get a seat as independents. But because there is no framework to cater for them, it means they will actually be disadvantaged again, even when they get into Parliament.
Yeah. And so when we start to look at electoral reforms at large in South Africa,
absolutely.
I mean, it is a conversation that has to happen. What sort of electoral systems do you believe is a good alternative? Is a hybrid something we should be considering? What should we be considering at this point?
Well, like I've indicated to you, there are quite a number of things that have got to be dealt with, because the electoral system, it is not just one area that has got to be looked into.
Yeah.
It is the totality of all the principles, all the practices in the electoral system that have got to be attended to. I've already given an example of some of the legislations that have got to change. It could also affect, for instance, Municipal Structures Act. It could affect also the Municipal Systems Act. But also, the fact that you're having this independence, but we don't know what their role is. We don't know what their powers are.
Yeah.
Even in the so-called constituencies that have been created for them, because remember that we don't have clear constituencies, so provinces have just been converted into regions.
But Terry, given where we are as a country right now, 2024 seems around the corner. The timeline seems very worrisome. What concerns arise for you at this point? I just wonder, the work done by the IC to build systems, to have this voter education, which is also another aspect one has to look into, to educate the public about these changes. What questions are arising there?
I really, really don't envy the work that the IEC has got to go through. Firstly, their time for preparations for the elections has been severely compromised.
Yeah.
And then now, they have got to develop, processes and systems to implement an act that can actually be challenged. So what kind of training are they going to be giving to their staff? You go through what you currently have. What if certain things are challenged successfully by the Constitutional Court, and then certain things have got to change? At what stage are they going to be able to prepare for a proper election? At what stage are they going to be educating the public about the new processes? So voter education, training of electoral staff, all those things are severely compromised. And then let alone the ability now to prepare logistics for these elections, because there are just too many complexities and then too many uncertainties relating to
Well,
this.
between you and I mean, the questions just keep popping up, and we don't have enough time at this point to explore everything. At this point, though, it is a step in the right direction in the country's commitment, perhaps, to electoral reform. So that is one stride that can be perhaps ticked off rather. But the legalities that follow, we'll have to see where to from here. But thank you for your time here on the SABC and for weighing in. Terry Tselane is the Executive Chairman of the Institute of Election Management Services in Africa, weighing in on the news. Coming in yesterday, we saw the Independent Electoral Commission saying it's preparing for the 2024 national elections, despite legal challenges following the signing into law of the Electoral Amendment Bill by President Cyril Ramaphosa.